friends, it's me Lauren with Bold Notion Quilting. I wanted to take a minute to do a quick tutorial on how to load your Longarm machine using your red snapper clamps. So we did a video just last week about how to sew on the casing that would make the channel to hold the rod that clamps your red snappers onto it. And now I want to show you how to take one of your quilt tops and attach it to your quilt frame using that red snapper system. So let's take a look at what it is that we're doing. All you're going to need is your Longarm with your red snappers fully installed, as well as all of the red snapper loading clamps that came with your machine. Alrighty, so let's take a look at the red snapper loading system clamps. So when I talk about the clamps, I'm talking about these rods with these kind of tubes, tubular open sections, right? These are going to fit over the rods that we sewed the casing on for our red snapper system. And you get 3 different sizes that come with your machine. You can get the 3 sizes that you get are a 42 to 44 inch really long one. You have one that's about 21 inches, and then a bunch of what I call placement clamps, which are 2 inches. Now, when you use the red snapper system, you want to make sure that your clamps are only about as long as your quilt top, so it can be a good idea to invest in other clamps. So, like I personally have one of each size. You can get these in 12 inches and 6 inches, as well as 10 inches. So we have those extra 3 sets. They come with 6 in a pack for the 6 inches, 4 in a pack for the 10 and for the 12, and those are only $10, and they're on boldnotionquilting.com if you need to get additional sets. And I'm going to show you why that's important when we go into loading here in just a second. Next, you want to grab your batting, your quilt top, and your quilt back so we can get started. So let's take it over to the machine. Alright, forgive my angle here, but I wanted to be sure that you could see every little bit of what I'm doing. So first, you've got your quilt top and you've got your quilt back, and most of us should know, if you're new to longarm quilting, your quilt back needs to be a good 4 inches bigger on each side, or 8 inches bigger total than your quilt top width and length, at least. Some people prefer 6 inches, some people like 8. Some people like as much as 10, but anything more than 8 I think is really hard to deal with. So first you're going to take, very first, your leaders. Your leaders should have a middle marking in them, okay? So my leaders are marked with an orange pen that you can't really see, with just a line that shows my middle. I took my leader out all the way to my bottom one, and I put them together and I marked my middle so that they matched. This is important for a very specific reason. My quilt back is going to be loaded to my pickup bar and my belly bar. And so the middle of my quilt back on the top should be in the same place as the middle of my quilt back on the bottom. Okay? And you'll notice I am missing a bar in here, and that's because I float my tops and I don't like to have it up here. But I will go over the concept of what to do without it, or if you had it in place of. So the red snapper clamps that you want to have already out should be your 2-inch placement clamps. I like to leave those right here in the middle. Okay? It is easier for me if I go underneath because I'm really short and my arms only reach so far. Okay? Depending on how you're going to load your quilt, you're going to pick a direction, whether you're going to load it lengthwise or widthwise. We're going to take both of our corners, we're going to match them together, we're going to find the middle. Mine so happens to be on a seam, so it's easy for me. So we're finding the middle, and we're going to take our fabric wrong side up, right side down, because when we stitch our quilt, we want to have the pretty side on the outside. Okay? We're going to put that middle right over our middle marking, and we're going to take one loading clamp, and I'm going to put that loading clamp just to the left of that middle marking line, and that's just gonna hold my back in place so I can keep going. And don't worry, my floor is clean. Okay? And every couple of inches, well, not every couple of inches, every foot or so, I like to put another clamp. Now, I try to keep this as uniform as possible. So if you notice, you have the edge of this leader, and on the edge that touches your canvas, it's a good place to rest your quilt along so that you can keep it nice and straight as you're clamping it down. So it can give you even fabric. Otherwise, you might accidentally clamp too much fabric on one side or too little fabric on the other side. So you'll do all one side, then you'll pick it up, and you'll do your other side. Try not to pull or stretch, and if I lift it up and it feels kind of skewed or canted, it could be because when I clamped it down, my fabric was draping over on one end. Okay, so I fix that middle one, put the next one, and the next one. Now, this isn't a very big quilt. My back is only about 86 inches. This is a 12-foot frame. So if I were doing 120 inches or 132 all the way across, I wouldn't have enough 2.5-inch loading, like, the clamps that I use to kind of stabilize and hold it on there, the 2.5-inch size. I would not have enough of these to do the whole quilt. So that's why I recommend getting extras of every size that you can, because they're worth it. All right, so now that I have that ready to go, remember I said it's about 86 inches. Your kit comes with 44 inches and 21 inches. So you get 6 of each, and if my top is 86 inches, you can do some math. Put 2 bigs and 1 medium. You could put 4 mediums, or you can just do what I do and kind of work your way from the middle out and go from there. So I put my first clamp to the left of my middle line. So I'm going to take my first 42, 44 inch clamp, and I'm going to put that down. Now, these are brand new, so it might look like I'm pushing hard, but I'm really not. I'm just pushing against my frame. You don't hold and clamp these together. You want to use your bars or your table to help you get this down. If it feels hard for you to push down, these are wonderfully flexible. Just bend it back, open up that channel, and slide it on over. Okay, as you get to one of the 2.5-inch holding clamps, you just pop it off. Oh, I'm sorry, my math was bad. You're only going to need 2 of these long ones. But that's okay, you can laugh at me and get a little bit of enjoyment out of this video. Okay, so then we're going to marry it right in the middle so it's touching. Push it down, get it started. Open up that channel and just push it down. For someone like me, this is so much faster and so much easier than zippers or pins or leaders, because with zippers you're often pinning anyway, or you're using your machine to baste it down as you go. And all of those just feel like extra steps when I could take 5 minutes and pop this on this way. It would take a lot less time if I wasn't instructing you on what to do. So you'll grab all your little 2.5-inch clamps, and we'll do the process again. Now if you're super tall, you don't have to bend over. You might be thinking, I can't bend under that machine, because it does feel kind of inconvenient sometimes, but if you're tall enough and you can reach and you can get good leverage there, then no worries. You can do it however it makes you happy. Just don't do it from behind where this red snapper's on the bottom. I've seen some people send me some pictures of the red snapper on the bottom because they had put this essentially this way around the back to clamp it down so they didn't have to climb underneath. When you have this big bulbous area down, your needle plate on your machine is going to hit it as you stitch, and it's going to cause all kinds of problems. So keep that in mind. Alrighty, so we've got our 2.5-inch stabilizer clamps, holding clamps. I'm going to take my middle. I'm going to line it up with my middle mark. Keep it all as straight as possible. Clamp my first one down, just to the left or right of what my middle is. Okay. Then I'm going to take my quilt top. Try not to pull too much as you're going. Just try to get it, to where it needs to be. And then go ahead and secure these down. Now sometimes that'll make this a little bit kind of full or roughly in the middle, but it can be just because this dangles just a little bit as you're putting your first clamp down, and so it can kind of pull and stretch on one side. So just reposition the middle one if this is looking like it's got too much fullness in it. Some people like to clamp every 6 to 10 inches. That's fine too. Just do what makes you feel secure. Alright, now before I do this next part, make sure that this bar can't roll. So I'm just going to put my brake down. Now it's stuck. And we're just going to need 2 long ones. Okay, and I did this to the left. Would have helped if I remembered that. So I'll do my right side first. You'll notice I like to kind of push. I like to rock. Okay. Everyone kind of has a method. When my son loads quilts, he's rearing that thing way back. Probably more than he needs to. Okay. Now if that's hard for you, you can also go back at the end, use your bar, and squeeze around it to make sure that it's completely down. Okay. Took off our middle clamp. Get this seated. Make sure that your fabric's not dipping down any more than it should be, so it's keeping even consistent on here. Alrighty. And now we've got our backing top on here, and we've got our backing bottom on here. So our backing top goes onto our pickup roller, and our backing bottom goes onto our belly bar, the bar that our belly hits. So I'm going to loosen my brake, roll this up. When you are using your red snapper system to load, you have to account for that extra 1.5 inch, ish that your red snappers are using to roll over the bar. So if you have, some people will make their backing big enough so that this big old lumpy part can go behind the leveler bar up here so that your machine doesn't hit it at all. All right. And some people don't. So when I load it, I usually leave it right below my leveler bar, right in the front, because that's where I can consistently know that I have enough backing. Okay. 2 or 3 rolls. Gentle massage out. Keeps our backing nice and straight. And you can see my backing doesn't have any pulls or wobbles because I lined my middles up on the top bar and the bottom bar. Okay. And now that I have this pretty squared away, I can wind it up until it's right where I want it to be. Now I don't want it stuck under this leveler bar. I want it just in front of it, because if it's stuck, it's actually being pushed down lower onto my machine, and I don't want to create any hazards or anything. I just want it to be easy and consistent to kind of maneuver through. All right, so oftentimes what I do for my backing is I give it a good tug. If your back bar is bending, your quilt top is too tight. So I give it a good tug so it bends a little bit, and then I relax it just a bit. And this, you can see, isn't so tight I could bounce a quarter off it, but it's not so loose it's draping everywhere. So you can kind of see sometimes on the edges, you get a little bit of drape, especially if you have a vertical seam. You get more tension here in the middle because the seam is stitched here, and then less tension towards the outside. You can remedy that sometimes by unrolling your belly bar a couple times and rolling it back up and kind of massaging the quilt back and forth until it is more even. Once you have your backing on there, you want to get your batting on. Okay, there is a right and a wrong side tier batting, and there is a stretch and non-stretch tier batting. So make sure that you pay attention to that. If you want more information on batting, you should check out my Free Motion Quilting 101 class on boldmotionquilting.com. We have a very in-depth section on all different kinds of batting and how they affect your quilt top, and that's the FMQ 101 Beginner's Guide to Free Motion Quilting. Alright, I'm trying to think. I don't think that's the right way. That's long ways. Maybe it is. So the goal is to put this in the middle as well. When you load your batting, you don't want to be pinching and pulling and tugging any more than you have to, because you will stretch and manipulate the batting. You don't want to do that. I try to keep it as center as possible. Okay. I kind of just Sometimes the edges can have a little bit of a ruffle, so you'll want to massage those out as much as possible. And then we'll get our quilt top and we'll put that on. This is the side I wanted to have loaded. Now if you loaded your snappers from the middle out, you actually can use that as your center marking system. Fold this in half, line it up with the middle. Okay, try to keep it as straight as possible. Some people will use a couple fingers just to guide how far away they should be so it's as even as possible. Some people will stitch a horizontal channel lock line so it's nice and straight as well. There are many methods to get this on here nice and straight. Okay, so that's in the middle, and my batting's not in the middle, but my batting is covered on both sides, so it's fine. I'm not going to worry about it. Okay, now once my quilt top is on here, where it's nice and flat, if I had the third bar, okay, I would be loading this quilt bottom to that third bar with the red snapper, and then I would be rolling it up until it's nice and firm with my quilt top, and this is where that bar would be, okay? And then as I unrolled, my belly bar and my top bar would unroll together to keep my quilt sandwich as nice and flat as possible. People who use this top bar love that it helps to keep their quilt tops a little more straight and a little more taut and tidy as they're quilting, but some people just don't like that bar and they like to float their quilt tops like me, so that's where I'm at. And it's just a matter of having space to move around and work. Otherwise that top bar would be, you know, right up here, and I'd have to be working over it to quilt. So I love being able to float my tops, and that's how I do that. So I apologize if it's weird not having the third bar, but I thought I would show you how to load your red snappers. Alright, so now that you've got your quilt on the frame, you're ready to start quilting. So I hope that this illuminates how to utilize your red snapper channel locking system, right? To get that rod into the channel to hold your quilt back on nice and tight, and also to hold your quilt top on. The benefit of a red snapper is if you pay close attention, you can see that it's giving you consistent tension all the way across, because the tension is where the red snapper channel is. If you were putting on pins, and if you haven't noticed this before, check it next time you load your machine with the pins. When you put the pins in, where the pins are, you have tension. In between each pin, you don't. So if you look underneath your quilt top, when on your quilt backing, if you look underneath your long arm, before you go to quilt, you'll see that it kind of has like a ripple effect happening underneath there. Sometimes that it can affect your backing with puckers and different things, but at most, I mean on a bigger scale, that inconsistent tension can mess with the tension for your thread path, right? So when you're quilting and your thread is going through your quilt top, there are areas that can be impacted by having too much or too little tension because of where those pins are. So keep that in mind. That was one of the bigger reasons why I decided to move into red snappers. I wanted even, consistent tension all the way across, and I have trouble pinning constantly. So for me, pinning was not going to happen because my hands get tired of it after about 3 pins. So this is fantastic because you can load your quilt and a snap, right? So it takes 5 to 15 minutes depending on the size of your quilt to get it loaded on there. I know we took longer today, but a lot of that is largely because I had to walk you through it. So I hope you found this useful. If you have any questions, please write in a comment below and I'd be happy to answer it as soon as I can. If you need a red snapper loading system, check out boldnotionquilting.com. We have them in 10 foot, 12 foot, and 14 feet for your long arm quilting machines. You can get those, and then also if you already have a red snapper loading system, you can check out our clamps. So we've got additional loading clamp sizes in 6-inch, 12-inch, and 10-inch and the 2-inch ones, so that you can have more loading ones if you want. But they're only like $10 a pack, and you get, essentially the same amount of clamp in each one, but some are longer and some are shorter. So It can be a fantastic way to help you get everything on there nice and square, and I hope that this was helpful. Give this video a like and share so that we can educate people on how these things are used, what they're used for, and maybe a different way that you can go about using them for you. So take care and have a wonderful day. Don't forget to like, comment, or share. Bye!